Treaty with the Chippewa of the Mississippi, March 19, 1867, ratified April 8, 1867. Articles of Agreement made and concluded at Washington, D.C. this 19th day of March 80, 1867, between the United States, represented by Louis V. Bogie, Special Commissioner thereto appointed, William H. Watson and Joel B. Bassett, U.S. Agent, and the Chippewas of the Mississippi, represented by Kwewajant, or Hole in the Day, Kuweshinshish, Waban Akwat, Minidowab, Mija Kikishik, Shab Askuk, Kagwedosh, Minikutshik, Wainame, and Ogab Agwan Ayash. Whereas by a certain treaty ratified March 20th, 1865, between the parties aforesaid, a certain tract of land was, by the second article thereof, reserved and set apart for a home for the said band of Indians, and by the articles thereof provisions were made for certain moneys to be expended for agricultural improvements for the benefit of said bands, and whereas it has been found that the said reservation is not adapted for agricultural purposes, for the use of such of the Indians as desire to devote themselves to such pursuits, while a portion of the bands desire to remain and occupy a part of the aforementioned reservation, and to sell the remainder thereof to the U.S. Now therefore it is agreed. Article 1. The Chippewas of the Mississippi hereby cede to the U.S. all their lands in the state of Minnesota, is secured to them by the second article of their treaty of March 20th, 1865, accepting and reserving therefrom the tract bounded and described as follows, to wit, commencing at a point on the Mississippi River opposite the mouth of Wanaman River as laid down on Sewell's map of Minnesota. Thence due north to a point 2 miles further north than the most northerly point of Lake Winnebagoshish, thence down west to a point 2 miles west of the most westerly point of Cass Lake, thence south to a Capacona River, thence down said river to Leech Lake, thence along the north shore of Leech Lake to its outlet in Leech Lake River, thence down the main channel of said river to its junction with the Mississippi River, and thence down the Mississippi to the place of beginning. And there is further reserved for the said Chippewas out of the land now owned by them such portion of their western outlet as may upon location and survey be found to be within the reservation provided for in the next succeeding section. Article 2. In order to provide a suitable farming region for the said bands, there is hereby set apart for their use a tract of land to be located in a square form as nearly as possible with 3 lines corresponding to the government surveys, which reservation shall include White Earth Lake and Rice Lake, and containing 36 townships of land. And such portions of the tract herein provided for shall be found upon actual survey to lie outside of the reservation set apart for the Chippewas of the Mississippi by the second article of the Treaty of March 20th, 1865, shall be received by them in part consideration for the cession of lands made by this agreement. Article 3. In further consideration for the lands herein ceded, estimated to contain about 2 million of acres, the U.S. agree to pay the following sums, to wit, $5,000 for the erection of school buildings upon the reservation provided for in the second article, $4,000 for each year for 10 years, and as long as the President may deem necessary after the ratification of this treaty for the support of a school or schools upon said reservation, $10,000 for the erection of a sawmill with grist mill attached on said reservation, $5,000 to be expended in assisting in the erection of houses for such of the Indians as shall be removed to said reservation, $5,000 to be expended with the advice of the chiefs in the purchase of cattle, horses, and farming utensils, and in making such improvements as are necessary for opening farms upon said reservation, $6,000 each year for 10 years, and as long as thereafter as the President may deem proper to be expended in promoting the progress of the people in agriculture and assisting them to become self-sustaining by giving aid to those who will labor. $1,200 each year for 10 years for the support of a physician, and $300 each year for 10 years for necessary medicines. $10,000 to pay for provisions, clothing, or other such articles as the President may determine to be paid to them immediately on their removal to their new reservation. Article 4. No part of the annuities provided for in this or any former treaty with the Chippewas of the Mississippi Band shall be paid to in any half-breed or mixed blood except those who actually live with their people upon one of the reservations belonging to the Chippewa Indians. Article 5. It is further agreed that the annuity of $1,000 a year, which shall hereafter become due under the provisions of the third article of the treaty with the Chippewas of the Mississippi Bands of August 2nd, 1847, shall be paid to the chief Hole in the Day and to his heirs, and that shall be set apart by selections to be made in their behalf and reported to the Interior Department by the agent 1/2 section of land each upon the Gulf Lake Reservation for Minnegoshig and Truman A. Warren, who shall be entitled to patents for the same upon such selections being reported to the Department. Article 6. Upon the ratification of this treaty, the Secretary of Interior shall designate one or more persons who shall, in connection with the agent for the Chippewa in Minnesota, and such of their chiefs parties to this agreement as he may deem sufficient, proceed to locate as near as may be the reservation set apart by the second article hereof, and designate the places where improvements shall be made, and such portion of the improvements provided for in the fourth article of the Chippewa Treaty of May 7th, 1864, as the agent may deem necessary and proper, with the approval of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, may be made upon the new reservation, and the U.S. will pay the expenses of negotiating this treaty not to exceed $10,000. Article 7. As soon as the location of the reservation set apart by the second article hereof shall have been approximately ascertained and reported to the Office of Indian Affairs, the Secretary of the Interior shall cause the same to be surveyed in conformity to the system of government surveys, and whenever after such survey of any Indian of the bands parties hereto, either male or female, shall have 10 acres of land under cultivation, such Indian shall be entitled to receive a certificate showing him to be entitled to the 40 acres of land, according to legal subdivision containing the said 10 acres or the greater part thereof, and whenever such Indian shall have an additional 10 acres under cultivation, he or she shall be entitled to a certificate for additional 40 acres, and so on until the full amount of 160 acres may have been certified to any one Indian, and the land so held by any Indian shall be exempt from taxation and sale for debt, and shall not be alienated except with the approval of the Secretary of Interior, and in no case to any person not a member of the Chippewa tribe. Article 8. For the purpose of protecting and encouraging Indians parties to this treaty in their efforts to become self-sustaining by means of agriculture and the adoption of the habits of civilized life, it is hereby agreed that in case of the commission by any of the said Indians of crimes against life or property, the person charged with such crimes may be arrested upon the demand of the agent by the sheriff of the county of Minnesota in which said reservation may be located, and when so arrested may be tried, and if convicted, punished in the same manner as if he were not a member of an Indian tribe, in testimony whereof the parties aforementioned, respectively representing the U.S. and said Chippewas of the Mississippi, have hereunto set their hands and seals the day and year first above written. Louis V. Bogie, Special Commissioner. W.H. Watson. Joby Bassett, U.S. Indian Agent. Kui Wajants, or Hole in the Day, his X mark. Kiwi Shinshish, his X mark. Wobanquo, his X mark. Minidowab, his X mark. Mijak Kikitshik, his X mark. Shaba Ashkunk, his X mark. Kagwaidash, his X mark. Minakashik, his X mark. Wainami, his X mark. Ogabe Guan Ayash, his X mark. In presence of T.A. Warren, U.S. Interpreter. Charles E. Mix, Lewis S. Hayden, George B. Jonas, Thomas E. McGraw, John Johnson, George Bonga.